Agent Romanoff. You miss me?
Oh yeah, Charles, we got ourselves an X-Men fan.
Captain.
Your Highness.
Captain, big fan, Spider-Man. Hey, everyone.
What a great note to end on. You might have noticed we have 2 empty chairs here at the end. So guys, come on back up and everybody welcome Sophie Turner, Ty Sheridan. Sophie, official blanket apology, just in case I accidentally ever go, hey, Jean.
That's okay.
Yeah. But at what point were you told that this is going to be Dark Phoenix, therefore centering on your character, finally? The finally was from the fans. I was speaking for us.
I was told about 6 months before we started shooting the movie. Simon kind of took me to lunch and sat me down and told me what the movie was going to be, that it was going to be Dark Phoenix, what that meant for preparation. And luckily he gave me enough time to prepare. But it was a big undertaking and a lot of pressure, but also such an honor because I know that the fans are so in love with this storyline, and I really think that we did it justice.
Let's bookmark the preparation that you did. Don't let me forget about going back to that. But tie down there at the end, when we're telling a story about Jean, we're also telling a story about you as well, about Scott. And I'm just going to keep saying you, because you guys are these people. So when you first read the script, I know there's not a lot that you can necessarily reveal, but where was the emotion for you?
Well, I think I was just excited that we were taking a crack at something that was a bit more grounded and a bit more human, if you will, even though we're all mutants. But it was really exciting because, as you can see, this is pretty early on in the movie, and that's kind of the central, instance where things start to change when you see what just happened in space. But yeah, I think after things start to unravel throughout the film, suddenly my character is encountering. He's lost the love of his life, and she's lost control of herself, and that's a really hard thing to grasp and swallow. And so I think it even splits the X-Men up. So there's a lot of conflict in this movie between the X-Men, and I think that. So you see a bit of fragility that you haven't seen in Scott in the past in some of these films, and that was really exciting for me.
Hutch, can you talk about how right now might be the perfect time for us to finally have the story? Like socially, like on a larger scale? Because you kind of can't ignore that kind of thing now. Information flows so freely.
Yeah, I think that's part of what makes these movies so resonant in general, specifically the X-Men movies, is because they deal so directly with alienation and prejudice and issues that certainly seem inescapable in the news these days. And it's no accident, I think, that Simon wanted to tell this story and has empowered the female characters in this story in the ways that he has, which is it's not to say politically, it's just a natural cultural instinct, and that's part of what I'll say it as a producer, is that you look for in your filmmakers are people who can see in the underlying material the possibilities to both create relatable circumstances as human beings, but also create relatable metaphors for what's happening in the culture. And this story is uniquely powerful in that regard, and I would say that the choice Simon made in terms of how he's told this story is perhaps even more so.
Yeah, and that's what good sci-fi does. It reflects your real world and helps you understand more about it through a story that might be a little more palatable, perhaps. Oh, well, can't wait. And finally, you're directing.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. You're like, yes.
Yes. It
was great fun, and you know, I've been writing and producing for many, many years now, and I worked with lots of different kinds of filmmakers, not just in the X-Men movies, but they've spanned from filmmakers that needed an immense amount of help, and so I got to sort of...
Ooh, which ones? Tell us everything.
Much of it is on record already, so you just Google it.
Not now, because you don't have your phones.
No, but so I've got to sort of practice direct on some big feature movies with directors who, let's say, were very collaborative. And then I've also got to just sit back and watch people like Ridley Scott and Ken Branagh, and Guy Ritchie and Matthew Vaughn and lots of great filmmakers who treated me like a partner, and at the very least allowed me to be present for the process. So I learned a lot. I mean, I learned a lot from watching Ridley direct, especially the way he interacted with the actors, the respect he had for them and the way he was collaborative with them, especially for someone like that, who doesn't need to be collaborative with anybody, because he's Ridley Scott. And yet he understands that he's part of what's so great about making movies is, and especially when you get to make them with great people, and you know, the best of the best, you have an opportunity to take all of that talent, harness it together, and create something that's greater than anything you could have done on your own. And with this cast especially, if I came to you and said I have a drama or a comedy or any kind of movie or science fiction movie with Ty Sheridan and Sophie Turner and Jessica Chastain and Jennifer Lawrence and Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy, and Nicole, you'd be like, that's the greatest cast ever. And they're in a superhero movie. So for me, what was exciting about directing, in addition to just being able to create the tone of the set and the tone of the movie, which I think is in some ways the biggest responsibility of the director, is creating tone, was to play with these actors in a different way, and to really get in there and collaborate with them and sort of tailor lines to them and listen to their cadences and the way they spoke and find their strengths, and play to them.
So, real talk then, having been in another X-Men movie, how was the experience different this time around with Simon as the director, kind of working with you and taking the performance apart and building it up in this particular way? Just pretend like he's not here.
He's definitely much more engaged and focused all around.
It has to be cool because so much of the movie is not, it's non-existent when you're shooting it. You know, it's perhaps an effect later, something like that. I'm sure it helps.
Yeah, sometimes, but I think a lot of times, you know, this story is so grounded in you know, drama that that's what it's about. You know, so it's innate in the script and in the writing, and you know, I think for us it was just nice to have someone guiding us and leading us, and it's a big movie. You know, you really need somebody who can really hone in on a vision and be really specific about every little detail. Because if you get one element that's not right, you know, some things start to kind of wander off kilter. And I think in this film, you know, Simon did such a great job. I know he's a first-time director, and it's crazy to me to think that, you know, he accomplished what he did in this film. And we all believed in him so much. You know, I don't think there was ever a doubt from any of the crew or the cast. You know, it was from day one. It was like, you know, we were backing this guy, and we knew he could do it. So. Yeah, it was overall, I think this film was much more pleasing to make.
That's the kind of voice that I get when there's been like a horrible accident and I turn into a robot all of a sudden, and I'm like, where did that come from? Ooh, that's great. That's one of the fantastic things about superhero movies these days, is just that there's fantastic actors in these movies. It's like you're getting, like, can you talk about getting Jessica Chastain in this new film? Because, you know, having all these folks in the film, and, you know, people who couldn't be here today, like Fassbender and James McAvoy, it's like, these are legit casts.
Powerhouse cast. And actually, Simon never really thought of anybody else for that role. And wrote it for her, had no idea whether she'd really be open to it, but it was one of those moments, and as a producer it makes you nervous, because if it doesn't pan out, it's inevitably a much more disappointing moment.
Yeah, that's like naming your movie Being John Malkovich and you haven't asked Malkovich yet.
Yeah, exactly right, right? So, but he did a really great job on the script, as he said, and knew the movie and the ambition of the movie so well, I think, was able to communicate all of that to Jessica in the language that made sense to her. So not that she was necessarily opposed to these movies, but I think the threshold she maintains for what it is she's interested in as an actress is extraordinarily high. And I'd say that's true of all the cast, but Jessica is, I believe, if not, in the top 3 actresses working today, maybe high. I mean, she's just an extraordinary actress. So the bar was high, and it required Simon, kind of show the goods as a first timer. That's challenging, but he did.
Yeah, I look at these casts and I'm like, to grab you guys again and to grab somebody, all these other cast members, these movies have to be intriguing on a different level. So we've reached just about the end of our time today, and before we go, I would like for each of you to choose an X-Men that you would like to be that is not you. Okay, so who of you all was related to or whose power is awesome? Pick and give an explanation, and then we will allow everybody to pull out their phones after that.
Do you want me to go first so you have time to think? Sure, it's an easy one for me. Magneto.
Nice.
1, he was my favorite character growing up. 2, he's just a badass. 3, he's Jewish. And we don't have a lot of representation in comic books. So, and he's just a complex, fascinating guy whose philosophy makes a lot of sense, but whose actions maybe don't. And that's an interesting dichotomy. But mostly because he's a badass Jew.
I go back and forth, but I think in this moment I'm gonna recommit to Wolverine because, I mean, and part of it I'm gonna confess is because of how long longer relationship now I've had with that character, but it's also because I love the mix of humanity and rage that coexists, and the struggle that he undergoes in trying to work that through, to me, is incredibly compelling on a whole bunch of different levels. And the fact that in the end he can kick your ass, I really like too. So the combo is probably gonna lock me in there. We bought you as much time as we can.
It still wasn't enough. I also like to think I'm just as ripped as Wolverine, but I don't know, this is something that you, Hutch, said earlier in another interview, which I thought was really interesting, kind of going back and forth between Professor X and Magneto in the way that they're kind of a bit like MLK and Malcolm X. I feel like I kind of go back and forth between them, striving to do the right thing, but doing it in vastly different ways and can't quite decide, and I feel like I'm either one or the other. So I don't really know. Maybe I'm just like Jean, actually. I'm probably just a bit unhinged.
And to also point out, Wolverine could not handle close proximity to a microwave, the adamantium, I'm pretty sure. Like, pretty positive. Okay, Ty, wrap it up for us.
We'll do it quickly. Jean Grey. Oh. She's just got it going on.
I'm about to.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody. How you doing? Hi. See you guys.